All right, so welcome to the November webinar, Cause JDSDSE. Sorry, I had to think about that for a minute. November webinar. We haven't done this in a while, so I've sort of forgotten how to do a few things. So I am Lee Johnson. I'm the host, the moderator from Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, if you've never heard of us. So I'm going to go through a couple of announcements real quick, and then we will go ahead and get started. And this will be recorded and posted to the Cause website after we're done, as well as the slides. So if you want to go back and review anything or watch the recording later on, you can. All right, so even though I got the acronym wrong there, I just want to talk a little bit about what's new in the journal. We've obviously had lots of articles come out in the last few months. A couple that just came out literally like yesterday. Web-based applets for facilitating simulations and generating randomized data sets for teaching statistics. There's a great discussion of some of the applets that are out there. I know some of the applets I actually use, the Rossman Chance ones I've been using for years. But they also developed, Yunting Liu developed some using Shiny, specifically for doing some surveys and generating randomized data like we get from online homework systems. And has provided all of the code that they use to do that. So if you're interested in using applets and that kind of thing in your classes, that might be a good one to check out. And then one that also, I believe, just came out yesterday, tools and recommendations for reproducible teaching from the Minas. I think I'm saying that right, I'm actually not. But Mina Dogaku and Mina Santakaya Rundell. And I apologize profusely for messing up that pronunciation to both of them. But that leads in very nicely to our webinar that's coming up in December. According to our editor-in-chief, there's going to be a special issue on reproducibility and responsible workflow coming out. I apologize. I think the link that was sent out with the announcement is not working yet, but it should be soon. And so the December webinar is actually going to bring in some of the authors that are in that issue and talk about some of the different concerns around reproducibility and responsible workflow. And so there are the authors that are scheduled to talk in December. And then that webinar will be slightly longer, from 4 to 4:45 on December 13th. So I believe the announcement's already come out, but in case you didn't know about it, there you go. And then we are trying to get a little bit ahead on the schedule and be a little bit more intentional about keeping things moving. So in January, we are going to do the Scratch to R webinar that was supposed to happen in October, but we had to reschedule that one. So that is with Xiuming Lao from Amherst College, and that'll be on January 17th. And there'll be an announcement that'll come out here in the next couple of weeks so that you have all of the information. The other thing I wanted to announce or just remind everyone is that Uskots is finally back in person. I know a lot of people are very excited about that. The conference runs June 1st through 3rd next year. Workshops will begin May 30th. And as it has been before, it's at the Penn State Hotel in State College. There's the website where you can go out and check out what's been posted so far. The keynotes have been announced, so you can see who the keynote speakers are. Couple important dates that are, at least one that's coming up. If you are planning to propose a pre-conference workshop or a breakout session, that proposal is due November 30th. If you are planning to do posters and beyond, those proposals, if you want feedback on your abstract, are due January 29th. The final version of the abstract is then due March 5th. Those of you who are not familiar with the system, the committee will give feedback to any abstract that is submitted before January 29th. We'll still consider abstracts. I'm sorry, I'm on the committee, so I know a little bit about this. We will consider abstracts that are submitted between January 29th and March 5th as well. We just don't give feedback on them. And then if you are thinking about a birds of a feather discussion, those proposals are due May 6th. So just some information on the upcoming dates, but please check out the website and see all the good things that are being posted and what's going to be going on with that. I look forward to seeing many of you there. All right, so let's get to our webinar. Today, we are talking with Kirsten Dohler. She is an associate professor of statistics in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics at Elon University, which is in North Carolina. She earned a PhD in statistics from North Carolina State University. Her research interests include statistics education, survival analysis, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kirsten primarily teaches statistics courses, but is also involved in leading study abroad programs. For more information, you can visit her faculty page, and once the slides are loaded, you will be able to click on that link and actually look at that. All right, and so I am going to stop sharing as soon as sorry, oops, I apologize. I'm stop share, and then Kirsten's going to go ahead and share her screen. I'll let you take it away.
Upper right. Okay, so welcome to my talk. As Lee said, I'm going to be talking about implementing a senior statistics practicum, lessons and feedback from multiple offerings, specifically the first and the fourth offering. And I'm at Elon University, kind of in the center of North Carolina. As Lee said, my interests are stats education. I've also recently become very interested in applying diversity, equity, and inclusion activities and assignments in statistics classes. I've done service learning research, global education research, and survival analysis research in the past. And to give you about 10 seconds of non-work information about me, my kids are named Kennedy and Lincoln. I'm a plant collector, and I like to run. This is the outline for this talk. I'll begin with an introduction, give you some information on the course, the Senior Statistics Practicum course, in which the research study was carried out. I'll give study details, talk a little bit about the results of the study, and then I'll give some instructor recommendations on how to be successful with this type of course, and I'll end with a conclusion. As part of the introduction, I wanted to just mention a couple things I heard at the Uskots conference, the International Conference on Teaching Statistics, over the summer in Rosario, Argentina, or actually in September. So at Uskots 2022, Dr. Steve McFeely, who's director of the data analytics at the World Health Organization, he was one of the keynote speakers, and in his presentation, he provided the following teaching strategies, which are use open-ended statistical investigations in class, use complex real-world data, allow collaborative work in classes, facilitate problem solving, and then use authentic assessment. And when I saw this, I saw, wow, that's exactly what we're trying to do with a senior statistics practicum or capstone type course. One other thing I'll mention I saw at Uskots, for the conference app, you could do a survey question, and Rachel Passmore from New Zealand asked, does your country, or do you have capstone courses in your country? And interestingly, about half of the respondents were unsure, and 10 out of 31 said, yes, they do have a capstone course. So I'll talk a little bit about course information. This statistics practicum course, it was a 400 level course, but we've switched to a 4-digit numbering system, so now it's a 4,000 level course. It fulfills the capstone requirement for statistics majors, and the other way, or two other ways they can fulfill this capstone requirement are through carrying out an internship or a research experience. And both of those two options require working with a faculty mentor. So in the statistics practicum course, students worked in groups of 3 or 4 students on a semester-long project with some type of outside organization. And I'll give you examples soon of the types of organizations that the course worked with. Prerequisites to get into the class include being a senior statistics major, and you have to have completed 1 statistical computing class. At Elon, we offer 2. We offer a data management course, which uses purely SAS, and then we offer a statistical theory class via simulation course, which is purely R. But students see SAS and R in a lot of other courses before they would take a computing class. And I'll just let you know that I use the term practicum and capstone interchangeably in this webinar and then in the corresponding paper in the Journal of Stats and Data Science Education. Some benefits of a practicum course are the following. Students gain real-world consulting experience so they can apply all this knowledge that they've learned in their previous stat courses. And they have a lot of opportunities to work with big data sets. And usually these data sets are much bigger than data sets they've seen in other classes. They get a lot of practice cleaning and wrangling data, which they don't always get in other classes. They increase soft skills like communication and public speaking, that kind of thing. Like I said, the course counts as a capstone course for the major. And then I encourage students to add their project that they work on to their resume, because I think it's a good resume builder. Another thing about this course is that it supports several of the GAZE guidelines, or the GAZE recommendations. These are the guidelines for the assessment and instruction of statistics education. Specifically, the guidelines or recommendations that are supported are number 3, which is integrating real data within context, with a context and a purpose. All of the groups are using real data from a partnering organization. They're definitely fostering active learning, and they're using technology to explore concepts and analyze data. In the past, students have used SAS and or R and or Python and or Fathom, etc. Some of the partnering organizations since the course was started several years ago are the following. There was a local apparel company, which was used in the first offering of the class, and it's a worldwide known company, and they have a local office, the headquarters around here. Another example is a local branch of a professional organization, and that organization actually worked with the course over multiple years, which is kind of nice. If you have a good partnering organization, it can be good to work with them in multiple classes, multiple years. We've worked with local nonprofit organizations. Groups in the course have worked with local government divisions, local academic researchers outside of Elon, and then one group worked with a global political organization. This is some details of the research study. The data was collected from 18 students, and I actually collected it on the first offering of the course, which was in 2018, and then 4 years later in 2021. 10 of the participants identified as female and 8 as male. Everyone in the class was a stats major, since that's a requirement, but quite a few of them were also, they also had a secondary major, such as computer science or accounting, something like that. As far as data collection, students did 3 reflection assignments throughout the semester, which were part of their course grade. There was a reflection at the beginning, towards the beginning of the project, the middle, and the end. And then they also answered an end of semester survey, an online survey, which had open-ended questions and some Likert scale questions as well. So first I'm going to talk about results related to some of the reflection assignments. I have a Venn diagram here, and in the first reflection, students were asked what they thought they would learn by doing this kind of consulting or capstone project. And then the oval on the right is based on the third reflection, in which they actually answered what they felt they had learned at the end of the project. So the things in the middle are things that they thought they learned and they actually did, like coding skills, data cleaning, the process of doing statistical consulting, communication skills, and working with a team. A couple students said they thought they would learn more about predictive modeling or text mining, and they didn't. And then several students said they learned a lot about data visualization, which didn't show up as something they thought they would learn. And then some students mentioned they got confidence from the project as well. One student mentioned chi-squared tests, which is covered in other classes, but maybe the student just brushed up on their chi-squared test skills. Some of the questions on the reflection assignments were, what difficulties are you facing in the project? And things that came up multiple times were difficulties cleaning the data, formatting the data. Like I mentioned, these are bigger data sets than students are used to. They had some coding and software challenges is working with big data. There was another question on the last reflection that said, what advice would you give future students? Which is kind of nice, because then you can actually go to the next class and say, here was some advice from past students who have succeeded in the class. One student said, be open to the fact that this experience will likely be significantly different than experiences in the classroom. And then other students talked about establishing a plan and modifying your goals along the way as necessary. Another student quote is listed at the bottom here. They said, statistics in the real world is not going to be as structured as it is in the classroom. Also, in the third reflection, students were asked if there's anything they would do differently. And one group talked, or several groups talked about asking their clients questions sooner and with more frequently. Increasing involvement in the visualization project was mentioned by one person, and then designing the project plan earlier in the semester. So some of these responses are related to timeline and then communication. The groups which had a bi-weekly or weekly meeting set to communicate with their community partner usually had better outcomes or felt a little more prepared for the project than groups that didn't have a regular meeting set up. On the end of the semester survey, there was a list of things we had done throughout the class or things that were done in the class, and students were supposed to pick 3 things that they thought were most beneficial, and then on the next slide I'll show you 3 things that were least beneficial. So in 2018, before the pandemic, students were actually able to go to the partnering organization because all of them were within maybe 45 minutes or so from campus. And so a lot of them felt that working with the client and meeting the client in person was nice. The on-site visit was nice. Working in a group was great. There were no in-person meetings in 2021. Everything was done via Zoom. In-class work time was mentioned as very beneficial. And then the process of actually writing the report was also mentioned as one of the 3 most things that were most beneficial several times. As far as least beneficial, in 2018, students mentioned the reflection assignments, and my response to that would be, if an instructor is going to do reflection assignments, then in the future you should show them research that shows reflecting on their learning is beneficial to their learning, because once they see that, I think they're less likely to click reflection assignments for this type of question. I did the marshmallow challenge on the first day in 2018. A few students didn't particularly like that. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's where you get into teams and then you try to build a marshmallow tower with several marshmallows, some string, and uncooked spaghetti. I was just looking at how the groups work together with each other before I finalized the teams, so that was the purpose of that. The end of semester survey that was given had questions such as, was the stats practicum a useful course to take? And almost everyone said yes to that. The students who replied no explained that they didn't intend to go into a career related to statistics after graduation. Another question on the end of semester survey was, would you have preferred an internal or external client? A few people were undecided, but most people did prefer the external client. One student who said they would prefer an internal client explained that it might be easier to communicate if the client was on campus, but some of the responses that checked, the students that checked external clients said there's more at stake and you might take the project more seriously if you're working with an organization outside of the university. These are some student quotes from the survey. One person said, I really enjoyed working with my team to problem solve and tackle a new type of project. I also liked the fact that we were trusted with so much responsibility and given trust to take the project in several different directions. So that was good for me to hear. Another student said, I expected to have a project prompt with clearly laid out instructions and a clear direction of the organization's expectations. However, I think we all gained new skills by creating our own path. So students learn that the path in a statistical consulting project is not always clearly laid out, and they have to ask a lot of questions along the way, which I think they don't always initially realize. One other thing I'll say is most of the organizations that the class works with, they probably don't have a stats group or a stats person on site to do this type of analysis, but in some cases they do. As far as recommendations from me on how to make this type of course successful, I will say that you should definitely encourage your student groups to communicate frequently with the clients and provide them with regular updates. That holds them responsible, and that's good too, because then questions that maybe normally wouldn't come up will come up in those shorter meetings, frequent meetings. Also, I assigned a group leader before the project started. What's interesting is sometimes the leader who's assigned does seem to be the leader throughout the course, but occasionally another person will emerge as the leader of the group, and that's fine. And groups can have multiple leaders. My fear, though, is that if a leader is not assigned, then the group may just be leaderless and then not really know what to do next. As I mentioned earlier, if you're going to do reflection, which I think is really beneficial, I think it's good to point them to research to help them understand why it's beneficial to their learning. And I've also done reflection with service learning classes in the past. I thought it worked well. Some of these projects need non-disclosure agreements, and a lot of times the non-disclosure agreements discuss where the data is going to be stored, who's going to have access to the data, how the data will be accessed, that kind of thing. In the first offering of the course, I had never done NDAs before, and it just took a while to get those confirmed because the university has to agree on the NDA, and so does the partnering organization. So if you're doing NDAs, just get those done as soon as possible, because if those aren't done, that can delay the start of the project. And then it's really important to look for partnering organizations that have suitable projects really early on. So if you're teaching this as a fall class, I would start looking the spring semester beforehand. Start reaching out to other people to see who might have a project, because you want to find a project that's doable in a semester, that's at the student's level, and that's going to have a good result for the client. So in conclusion, I think students really appreciated the experience. One quote, or another quote is, "I really appreciated the opportunity to work on a true project and the soft skill development that came with the opportunity." Students really felt the experience was rewarding and had a positive impact. And then I think that carrying out the whole process of statistical consulting helps students to further realize the importance of statistics. And I think even with me in grad school, I didn't realize till maybe I was out of grad school that, wow, all these other fields, they use statistics too. I want to give a special thanks to my co-authors, Sierra and Alexandra, and then Lee for inviting me. Thank you. And then also my colleague, Mark Weaver. He's also taught the course and has taken it over from me. And I've given my contact information here, and then I also linked to the paper in the Journal of Statistics and Data Science Education. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
If you want to go ahead and there's a question and answer thing on Zoom that you can do, or you can just send it directly to me through the chat, or to us, actually. I believe Kirsten will see those. Actually, I did have one question for you. So how much time do you put in? Like, how much do you know about these projects before students start them? Like, is there a lot of prep work kind of behind the scenes? I mean, you mentioned NDAs and that.
Yeah, my advice is have several projects lined up, possibly more than you need, because what can happen is a community partner or partnering organization might fall through. So yeah, ask specific questions. Is the data really going to be available? So there is kind of a lot of work. The nice thing is that if you find a good partnering organization, possibly you can use that organization for multiple years, which is helpful. So I would say was that your question? How much work in advance is?
Kind of, yeah. Like, how much do you know exactly about these projects? Because how structured are they? Or
sometimes they're unstructured. I know sometimes it'll be a group that has statistical background and they're trying to, I don't know, increase sales or something. And they have all this data. Other groups, sometimes they just have big survey results and they're not really sure what to do with it, or where to go from there. So a lot of it involves me asking questions in the beginning to see if it's a suitable project.
Yeah.
And then helping the students to ask questions as well.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Okay. I think you can see those, but I'll read them.
Let's see. I see it. Do you have funding for students traveling to clients? I don't. A lot of times they're on Zoom now, or they're just local. If they're far away, it's just been a Zoom thing. So I don't think anyone who's taught the courses has had funding, as far as I know. And then the way students are matched to external clients is you can do a couple things. I've done a survey before where students rank the projects. So if somebody's an accounting major and they're working with in one of the projects is maybe an accounting consultancy or accounting writing group, they might want to be matched with that, if so they rank them. And then another thing I do is I ask a survey in the beginning. I say, hey, how well do you know SAS? How well do you know R? How well do you know Python? Because it's nice to have students in a group that have a variety of skills, because you don't know exactly what they're going to need for the project. And I've also conversed with other faculty before groups are finalized. There's a question that says, do you ever reuse projects or have groups working on the same projects? I would say it's not exactly the same project, but clients have been reused again. Sometimes if a client gives a yearly survey, then you can have another analysis of the new data, something like that. Let's see, students' backgrounds. They're all stat majors in their senior year, so they've had quite a few stat classes already. In our program at Elon University, students also have a concentration, and that could be a variety of things. So the concentration could be mathematical statistics, or it could be actuary concentration or social sciences. We have a lot of different concentrations. So I would say the background varies. And then as far as the size of the course, it's been fairly small. It's been between maybe 8 and 12 people, I think, around there. The nice thing is that if those 8 to 12 students weren't in the course, they would have to have an individual faculty mentor for either a research experience or an internship. So it does cover it helps to a lot of students to get the capstone course checked off their degree audit, and I think it's a good experience as well. And students who are double majors, if they're doing an internship in their other major, let's say before their senior year, they may not have a chance to fit in a stats internship, so the course is a nice alternative. But it's important to get some background information from students before they start. You don't want to put a group together who all have a similar background, and then maybe they have to do, I don't know, design an experiment or something, and no one's taken that class yet, something like that.
There was a question that popped up in the middle of
yes.
the,
kind of check-ins. Oh, check-ins throughout the semester. One thing I forgot to mention is I do have students do a mid-semester presentation to the rest of the class. And some of the students didn't feel it was super valuable, but I thought it was nice because then they could start talking about their project. At the end of the semester, they're going to have to do a presentation for the client anyways. So I do that. I do the reflection assignments, which helps me get a good idea on how things are going. And another thing I didn't mention is I have the groups rate each other. And basically, if there's 4 in a group, I say, okay, pretend you have $400. How would you divide this money up amongst the group? And if it's not even, I want to know, who did what. And it's interesting because sometimes the students who are actually hard workers don't give themselves the full $100. They'll give themselves $90, and their group members a little bit more. And then I do that maybe towards the middle of the project and then the end. And then I have small individual meetings with the students to see how things are going during class, just little 5-minute meetings with each student individually.
There was one that popped up, and I'm not sure why it's in the middle of this, but do clients evaluate the student?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. I have asked for feedback from the clients at the end of the semester. Yes. So they receive the written report and then they see the presentation as well. So it is good. I think it's good to get some feedback from them. And another thing you can ask them is, how could this type of project be improved in the future? Good question.
Yeah. I actually had another quick question. How do you pick the leader? I was curious. Like what?
Sometimes I talk with other faculty members too, and I've sent out an email. I will say the first time the class was taught, the email was sent out. We need leaders, and we need at least a couple. Who's interested in being a leader? And almost every male in the class said they wanted to be a leader, and no females wanted to be a leader. So I did talk one female student into being a group leader, but I thought that was interesting how that was set up. So I ask, sometimes I encourage people, and then if I have students in the class that I haven't had in other classes, I'll talk to other faculty to see what they think. And the reason I decided to assign a leader beforehand is because the NC State Masters of Data Analytics program, I heard, does that. And they do, I think, much more involved testing and background information and that kind of thing to pick the leaders and pick the projects. I don't do personality tests or anything like that to make up the groups. The class is not that big to do that.
Are you just looking for somebody who's done well in their other classes or
Yeah.
outgoing or?
Yeah, I mean, it could be different things.
Okay.
Yeah, and I a lot of times get the opinions of other people who've taught these students, because sometimes I teach intro class for a couple semesters and I may not have many upper levels. It just kind of depends. Sometimes you might know the students well, and sometimes they might be new students that you don't know.
Well, just checking out the chat and the questions. Looks like you've gone through all of them and you've got a couple of thank yous. So thank you for doing this.
For inviting me.
Yeah, no, it's great. So the recording and the slides will be up on Cause shortly. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of the term. Enjoy your Thanksgiving break. I know I'm going to very much.
I'm sure
Have a great afternoon.
Bye, Lee. Thanks.
Bye.